Today's subject is slavery.
The second and probably last Watcher trailer released quite a while ago, and the reason that I would say that it could be the last is because it blessed us with a release date, that being March 28th, 2025. So that means we got a good, say, 6 months before it comes out, so in that time I'd like to spout all of the vanilla Coke withdrawal-induced ideas I have about it. But before I get into that, I'm just gonna do a quick recap of every piece of information we have about the DLC so far. The initial teaser, which didn't tell us anything besides, hey, this sure does exist. Windchime, an unlisted video on Acapara Games' YouTube channel, which had some text in the very top left that said September 19th. This video posted on Video Cold's Twitter, which when put into a spectrum analyzer output the word consider with the I and D switched around. Windchime 3, another unlisted video on Acapara Games' YouTube channel with this weird orb spinning around under this cactus. Because this is called Windchime 3, I'll be calling the previous video Windchime 2. And the Ripple trailer, the second actual trailer that was an cryptic puzzle, which had this guy yapping about water droplets, then showed various regions before giving the release date, like I said before. Got all that? No? Well, too bad, I'm getting into the video anyways. With everything we've seen so far, I think it is fair to assume that the Watcher's main ability will be to go invisible. In the very first trailer, we saw 4 creatures either look at him or get very close to him, and none of them noticed. The fourth one not being the poll plan, but actually us, the viewer. Unless if you want to argue that he randomly materialized, I think invisibility makes the most sense. You could make the point that, since the Watcher is dark in color, bro just had his eyes closed and that's enough, but that is hella racist. In all seriousness, this would make sense, but it wouldn't work in game, as Invis dark in color, he starts off in the darkest region of the game, and I will tell you from experience that that did not help me hide from red lizards. And if you're asking, no, I have not seen anyone argue this, but look, I'm just covering all my bases. Further proof of this is in the Ripple trailer, where in one of the regions being showcased, he's, do I even need to say it, man? Well, yeah, you can't see him, that's the point. Don't worry, I'm gonna get to the weird aimless blue void spawn later. I mean, just given the name, the Watcher, I think this makes sense. All of the slugcats are named in some part due to their abilities or their lore, and what would an invisible creature mainly do? Watch other things as they pass by. Like a Watcher, do you get it now? Now, I'd like to ask, how is this gonna work? Is going invisible an on-command ability? Does it have a cooldown? Does it cost anything, maybe like a food pip every time you use it? Does it have some kind of karma requirement like Saint's Ascension? You would think that if this really did make you undetectable to creatures, especially hostile creatures, that it would need to be used strategically in moments where it's actually necessary, not to just skip past every encounter, because let's be honest, most of y'all suck at this game. I'm a hater for real. This is something I brought up briefly in my last video, and it seems like a pretty popular theory if the comments are anything to go off of. So I'm gonna expand on it and explain why I think the Watcher's campaign is going to take place on a completely different map. First of all, this DLC is clearly primarily focused on new regions, whether they be completely new ones or community mods being added officially, and creatures will probably be a second after that, then the Watcher himself. This is in contrast to Downpour, which was focused mostly on the new slugcats, then new regions, then new creatures. But even then, most of the new regions were the same ones from the base game, but from a different point in time. They're still incredibly unique, especially those in Spearmaster and Saint, but they're on opposite ends of the timeline, which was what makes them so different in the first place. However, regions still connect to the same other regions, the same core objectives are located in generally the same place, and any actually new regions were implemented because they provided useful paths to travel down or were necessary to the completion of that campaign. If all of these new places were to be added on top of the old map, there would be virtually no reason to go to them, unless if the game was turned into a massive 9-layer fetch quest. I need to go to 5 Pebbles again? Am I gonna go through all these cool new regions? No. I'm gonna go through Chimney Canopy for the 500th time. An obvious objection to this is that, well, they're adding all of these regions that were originally developed as community mods that connected the original map. They have to be connected somehow. But the way I see it, just change where the karma gate goes to. Or, more realistically, these modded regions could serve as pathways between these two, largely, but not entirely, separate maps. I think it would make sense to have the two be traversable. Then, once you're done doing whatever in the Watcher's campaign, you could go take a trip to 5 Pebbles and, let him kick you out of his house. I mean, that's really the only thing he does. Something that I feel really proves this is the various things we've seen of this region. You know, the pink one. Some people tried saying to me that this region's whole reason for looking like, open quote, the aftermath of a gender reveal party, closed quote, was because it's at sunset. What are you, Down syndrome? In the old screenshot of it on the DLC's Steam page, you can see well off into the distance above the cloud line. But do you notice anything missing in this? compared to when we can see above the clouds at the top of the wall. There are no iterators out there. Atop 5 pebbles you can see multiple, stretching out across the landscape, and even in Saint, where they've all collapsed by that point, they're still poking out. Unless if you want to argue that this campaign takes thousands of cycles after Saint, where everything has just completely fallen under its own weight to the point where it's at the same height as the grass on the ground, this is irrefutable. Plus the moon's in a different spot, that's not really important though. Hey guys, it's me, Hollow here. It's a little late, if you can't tell by the way I'm speaking now. I just wanted to remind you all that I did make a Discord. It is out, you can go join it, it's pretty cool in there. Just a quick little reminder though, if you aren't funny, I will be banning you, so keep that in mind. Anyways, I'm off to go sing the national anthem, say the Pledge of Allegiance, and the Rothman's Creed before I go to bed. Enjoy. Ever since seeing the screenshots on the Steam page, everyone has asked the same question. How does this region, a desert, exist within a reasonably close proximity to this region, a tundra? Well, except for the people who think this is salt, but I'm ignoring them. I mean, what are you down to? I think the answer is that these drastically different places are not inexplicably close to each other, nor are they separated by massive distances, but instead, they are separated by the passage of time. Now, why do I think this? Well, for a multitude of reasons. Take notice of this region that we've been shown multiple times. This is Stormy Coast, a fan-made region that's being added officially in this DLC. A defining feature of it is how the weather changes based off of what slugcat you play as. So when you play as, say, Survivor, it's raining all the time but the rain isn't fatal. But in Spearmaster, it's foggy, and even the name of the region changes, being Shrouded Coast in this case. The reason the weather changes is because all of these slugcats campaigns happen at different points in time. Now take a look at the various times it's been shown. We've seen it 3 times, on the Steam page, in Windchime 2, and in Ripple. What differences do you see in these images? I rest my case. Now you could say that, well, it's only raining because the cycle started with a shelter failure, but we've seen it as rainy twice, and if you've ever heard of Occam's razor, then I hope you'll realize that maybe, just maybe, it's a little out there to assume that our guy here has a habit of waking up early. You could also argue that, maybe, a more realistic assumption is that the weather in this region is different on either end, and that it might blend together in the middle. This isn't anything new after all. This is a room in Subterranean. It doesn't look like it, but that's because it's directly next to Farmer Is. This is a room in Waterfront Complex. It doesn't look like it, but that's because it's right next to Moon Superstructure. But Stormy Coast is a modded region. You can go play right now. We have the map for it. You can go look at it, and when you line it up with the rooms we've been shown, you realize all of these places are not very far from each other. Pretty close, actually. Now, I don't think this is going to be like time travel or anything, but more like a slow and steady process that takes place over the course of many cycles. Another softer reason to believe this is in the Steam page's description, where it says, "Where the world beneath your feet cracks and crumbles." Before, I said that this was probably a reference to how the Void is actively eating the world from the bottom up, and I still stand by that, but that's not the point. Notice the present tense used in the sentence. I know it's not that much, but it could very well be implying this is actively happening. And with only one Slugcat's playthrough for it to happen in, it couldn't be small gradual changes campaign to campaign, like we saw in Downpour. Well, small is an understatement. That's all for this one, but it's gonna tie in with the last theory, so make sure to stay tuned. So, assuming that my last theory is true, which it is because I can't be wrong about anything, this one is a logical conclusion of that. In my first video talking about the first trailer, I said briefly that the Watcher could take place after Saint. I no longer stand by this. I mean, even at the time, my only reasoning for it was because there was one region that had snow, but I seem to forget how just 5 seconds earlier I was talking about this region. Doesn't seem very in line with Saint's World, huh? At what point in time does the most change occur during the playable Rain World timeline? Between Rivulet and Saint. Should we see time actively pass and things change, this period of time would make the most sense. And if you're still asking about the desert, then that would probably exist at the beginning of the campaign and the tundra at the very end of it. That's not my point though. One thing that could easily throw a wrench into this though, is how Stormy Coast will behave. Will the weather be accurate to how it is in the base game? What I mean by this is, since the weather is dependent on what Slugcat you're playing as, will certain weather conditions mean you're at the same point in time as that Scug? Because if so, that means that the Watcher spans all the way from Spearmaster, all the way up to Survivor, and possibly further. Or if it isn't accurate, then anything is possible, which then would make the most likely time frame being directly before Saint. Anyways, onto something actually important.
Hollow, the fourth theory, it isn't good enough. It doesn't fit in. It's not as fleshed out. It doesn't make as much sense. You need to get it out of the video. It's not good. Obama told me. It's not funny enough. The video, it's not funny enough. I took one look at this video and I said, wow, that's not funny.
This is by far the most important theory I'm going to bring up, so it's nice to see that I'm not the only one who believes it. I actually implied it at the end of my video talking about the Watcher when it was first announced. How did I think this all the way back then? Well, because of the main promotional art for the DLC. When you look into the Watcher's eyes, there is a slight gold tint, and around his head are faint gold particles. What are those reminiscent of? Echoes. At the very beginning of the Ripple trailer, there's this guy talking about water droplets in the same language that Moon and Pebbles speak, but with his voice slowed down by 2000%. But take notice of the various words used. Loop, ring, spiral. All of these words are used at some point in order to describe the cycle. And at the end, when he describes just a lot of rain hitting the ground, that's a very vague description of how different creatures' cycles interact with each other. Now, why would the nature of the cycle be particularly important here? Well, echoes are the only creatures exempt from it. In Saint, who is explicitly an echo, the nature of the cycle is emphasized and described at every turn because it is especially important to him, due to his own relationship to it, that being how he is not fully engaged in it or, in a way, trapped in his own special kind of hell. In fact, back on the old clip I mentioned earlier where he's invisible, in the same trailer, there are blue void spawn floating around him. Not only are they the opposite color than what they should be, they're usually gold, they're displaying the opposite of their normal behavior. A void spawn, once touched, begin flying towards the Void Sea. This is the only direction they go in, and once you get there, there are hundreds of them following you down into the depths. Here, they're aimless, changing direction constantly, almost around the Watcher. Should he be an echo, it would make sense that he would have weird effects on void-related creatures around him. Should he be an echo, it would make sense that time actively passes, and things change in his campaign. The Watcher didn't drink 5 Pepsi and it gave him immortality. By nature of being an echo, he is cursed to exist perpetually as the world around him changes and changes and changes. I mean, again, just remember what his name is. The Watcher? What's the only thing echoes can do? The thing I just said. Watch as the world around them warps into something completely unfamiliar to them. Watch as time passes by without them being able to affect the world around them. And talk, I guess. But look, he's an animal. Give him a couple thousand cycles of evolution and he'll get there. Anyways, that's all. Like I said, I got like a solid 6 months before this comes out, so in that time I'm going to be squeezing in every Rain World idea I have. If anything else comes out about this DLC, this is going to age like milk.
This Hollow guy, he's gay. I'm telling you, Obama told me. I took one look at this Hollow guy and I said, wow, this guy's gay. Obama. 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 Joe.